She walked in with her head held high but was greeted with contempt. They laughed at her simple clothes, called her the wrong customer, and sent her away. What they didn't know was that they were speaking to one of the largest agricultural producers in the region. Hours later, she returned with her accountant and bought every car in the showroom one by one in front of the same salespeople who had humiliated her. Subscribe to our channel now and see how appearances can be deceiving and how comebacks can be silent and worth millions. The rising sun bathed the vast soybean fields that stretched as far as the eye could see. Owner of an agricultural empire that few could imagine, Sarah Mitchell contemplated her property from the porch of the main house. At 45, her face bore the marks of someone who knew the value of hard work and perseverance. Her calloused hands told stories of a life dedicated to the land, even after her empire no longer required her physical labor. The daughter of small farmers from Hastings, Nebraska, Sarah had inherited from her father not just a small plot of land, but a vision for the future that extended beyond the horizon. While many sold their properties to large conglomerates, she did the opposite. With wisdom, patience, and a keen eye for business, she transformed that small piece of ground into one of the largest agricultural cooperatives in the Midwest. "Good morning, boss. Already up so early?" greeted Earl, the foreman who had been with her since the beginning. "The day on the farm starts before the sun, Earl. You know that better than anyone," she replied with a serene smile while sipping her hot coffee. That morning, Sarah had an important appointment in Lincoln. The United Producers Cooperative, of which she was president, had decided to modernize their fleet. New vehicles would be purchased to optimize logistics and expand their business further. As always, she insisted on being personally involved in important decisions. "Mark has already prepared the documents for today's meeting," informed Rachel, her longtime assistant, who arrived with a leather folder full of papers. "Mr. Oliver from the bank confirmed that the credit has been approved as we requested." Sarah nodded. After breakfast, she changed from her simple clothes into a modest but comfortable outfit. No flashy jewelry or designer clothes. For her, luxury was in the freedom to be who she was without pretense. "Mrs. Mitchell, aren't you going to change clothes before going to the city?" asked Mrs. Jenkins, the housekeeper, with genuine concern. "I am dressed, aren't I?" she replied with a light laugh. "I'm going to buy cars, not walk a runway." The trip to Lincoln took just over 2 hours. Upon arriving in the capital, Sarah asked her driver to drop her off in front of Elite Motors, famous for dealing exclusively with imported luxury vehicles. "Are you sure you don't want me to come in with you?" asked Tommy, her driver and trusted man. "No need, son. I'm just going to take an initial look, then we'll come back with Mark to close the deal," she replied, stepping out of the car with the naturalness of someone on familiar ground. The facade of Elite Motors was imposing. Mirrored glass reflected the blue sky, while gleaming cars were strategically positioned like rare jewels in a display case. Sarah adjusted her simple leather bag on her shoulder and walked purposefully toward the entrance. As she crossed the automatic doors, she was greeted by an environment that looked more like an art gallery than a car dealership. The marble floor gleamed, and the vehicles arranged on rotating platforms resembled modern sculptures under strategic lighting. The cold air conditioning contrasted with Lincoln's typical heat. The few customers present wore clothes that betrayed their purchasing power. Executives in suits, ladies with designer bags, young heirs with expensive watches. Sarah, with her cotton pants, simple button-up shirt and low shoes, stood out completely from that scene. She noticed the looks as soon as she took her first steps through the showroom. Salespeople whispered discreetly, and some customers observed her with nothing subtle about their curiosity. Ignoring the reactions, she headed to one of the premium SUV models that particularly interested her. "May I help you?" The voice came accompanied by a practiced smile. Ryan Matthews was the type of salesman who stood out in environments like that. Tall, impeccably dressed, with meticulously combed hair and an expensive cologne that announced his arrival before his words. "Yes, I'm interested in this model," Sarah replied, pointing to the vehicle in front of her. "I need information about its cargo capacity, performance on dirt roads, and range." Ryan's smile faltered for a moment. "Are you looking for something for your employer?" he asked with false casualness. Sarah looked him in the eye, maintaining her composure. "No, I'm interested for my company." A muffled laugh caught her attention. Pamela, another sales associate, approached with calculated steps, her high heels marking her presence on the marble floor. "Ryan, I think the lady is in the wrong store," she said, not even bothering to disguise her disdain. "We don't sell tractors or farm trucks here. Our vehicles are, how can I put this, for a more exclusive clientele." The insinuation hung in the air. Sarah felt the weight of the words but didn't show it. She maintained her erect posture, her eyes steady. "I see. And what exactly is the criterion for this exclusive clientele?" she questioned, with a calmness that briefly disconcerted the salespeople. Ryan adjusted his tie, clearly uncomfortable, but maintained his arrogant posture. "Ma'am, these vehicles cost more than $500,000. Perhaps you would be more comfortable at a dealership, more consistent with your possibilities." Another salesman approached, attracted by the commotion. Brian, younger than the others, seemed torn between curiosity and embarrassment at the situation. "Any problem here?" he asked, looking from Sarah to his colleagues. "No problem," Pamela intervened with a fake smile. "Just explaining to the lady that this isn't a place for just anyone. Our clients are people who can actually afford what we sell." Sarah looked around. She noticed that some customers were watching the scene with curiosity, others with visible discomfort. A man in a dark suit, who appeared to be the manager, was talking on the phone without noticing what was happening. "Let me be direct," continued Ryan, lowering his voice. "You're out of place in this environment. We have nothing here that could interest you. Please don't make us waste our time." The words fell like stones. Sarah took a deep breath, maintaining the dignity that had always been her guide. "I appreciate your honesty," she finally said, adjusting her bag on her shoulder. "There really isn't anything here that interests me." With firm steps, she headed for the exit. She didn't run, didn't bow her head. She left as she had entered, with the dignity of someone who knows her own worth. As she got into the car where Tommy was waiting, her face finally revealed what she was feeling. It wasn't hurt, nor anger. It was a silent determination that her driver knew well. "Everything okay, Mrs. Mitchell?" he asked, concerned. "Everything's fine, Tommy, just fine," she replied with an enigmatic smile. "Call Mark. Tell him we need to meet now. There's been a change of plans." As the car pulled away from the dealership, Ryan and Pamela laughed discreetly, sharing their victory over the intruder who had dared to invade their territory. "Sometimes we need to filter the clientele," commented Pamela, adjusting her perfectly straightened hair. "Imagine if we started serving anyone who walks through the door." "Exactly," agreed Ryan. "Those types of people don't even know how to pronounce the names of the brands we sell." What they didn't know was that, in a short time, those smiles would disappear. Because Sarah Mitchell wasn't just anyone, and the lesson she was about to teach would be etched in the memory of that dealership forever. On the way back to the hotel where she would be staying, Sarah made a few calls. The first was to Mark Thompson, her accountant and longtime friend. "Mark, we need to talk. There's been a change in the fleet acquisition plans," she said, while watching the city through the car window. "You were right about certain people. Only learning one way." On the other end of the line, Mark, who had known Sarah for more than 20 years, recognized that tone of voice. It was the same one that had preceded some of the cooperative's boldest and most successful decisions. "What happened?" he asked, curious. "I'll tell you when we meet. For now, prepare the documents. We're going to need a considerable transfer tomorrow morning." As she hung up, Sarah looked at the Lincoln sky. The sun was beginning to set, painting the horizon with shades of orange and red. Tomorrow would be a new day, and as her grandmother used to say, those who sow the wind reap the whirlwind. The luxurious restaurant of the Prairie Palace Hotel was almost empty at that hour of the night. At a discreet table in the corner, Sarah and Mark talked in low voices while sharing a bottle of red wine. "They really did that?" asked Mark, adjusting his thin-framed glasses as he absorbed his friend's account. At 50, with grey hair at his temples, He emanated the confidence of someone who knew the numbers and the people behind them. "Exactly as I told you," replied Sarah, gently rotating the glass between her fingers. "But I'm not upset, Mark. I'm disappointed. Not with myself, but with a world that still judges people by appearances." Mark knew her too well to believe in that serenity. Behind her composure, he could see the spark of determination in his friend's eyes. It was the same expression he had seen when, years ago, banks denied credit to the cooperative, and she found alternative forms of financing that ended up being more advantageous. "What are you planning, Sarah?" he inquired with a half-smile. She took a sip of wine before answering. "A lesson, Mark, not for revenge, but on principle. Those people need to understand that the world is bigger than their showroom." The next morning, the day dawned with the typical clarity of the Nebraska plains. Sarah woke up early as usual. After a hearty breakfast, she dressed in a simple but elegant pantsuit, nothing ostentatious, just enough for a day of business in the capital. She completed the look with a pair of discreet earrings that her father had given her when she took over the presidency of the cooperative. At 9 o'clock sharp, Mark arrived at the hotel driving his own car. He brought with him a leather portfolio full of documents and the demeanor of someone ready for an important mission. "Got everything?" asked Sarah, getting into the vehicle. "Everything as requested," he confirmed, handing her some papers. "The transfer has already been authorized by the bank. We can use up to the amount we discussed yesterday." The journey to Elite Motors was made in comfortable silence, interrupted only by occasional comments about the traffic or the beauty of the city. As they parked in front of the dealership, Sarah took a deep breath. "Ready?" asked Mark. "Born ready, my friend," she replied with a serene but determined smile. As they entered the dealership, the environment was practically the same as the day before. The cold air conditioning, the soft background music, the gleaming cars. Ryan was attending to a young couple, while Pamela was animatedly talking on the phone at her desk. Other salespeople circulated through the room, all impeccably dressed, and with professional smiles on their faces. It was Brian, the youngest salesman, who spotted them first. He immediately recognized Sarah, and for a moment his face betrayed his discomfort. He hesitated, looking around as if seeking help, but ended up walking toward them. "Good morning. Can I help you?" he asked, trying to maintain professional composure. "Good morning," Sarah replied with a polite smile. "We'd like to speak with the manager, please." Brian nodded, visibly relieved to be able to pass the responsibility forward. "Just a moment, I'll call him." While they waited, Pamela finally noticed Sarah's presence. The shock on her face was instantaneous, soon replaced by an expression of disdain. She nudged Ryan, who interrupted his presentation to the couple, and looked in the indicated direction. His smile disappeared. The manager didn't take long to appear. Andrew Miller was a middle-aged man with a well-cut suit and impeccable posture. Unlike the salespeople, his smile seemed more genuine when he approached. "Good morning. I'm Andrew Miller, manager of Elite Motors. How can I help you?" "I'm Sarah Mitchell, and this is Mark Thompson, accountant for the United Producers Cooperative." She introduced herself formally. "We're here to make a corporate purchase." Andrew slightly furrowed his brow, as if trying to remember something. "Mitchell, you were here yesterday, weren't you?" "Yes, I was, but I wasn't properly attended to," she replied, maintaining a polite but firm tone. The manager cast a quick glance at Ryan and Pamela, who now observed the scene with evident apprehension. "I'm sorry for any misunderstanding. Please come to my office so we can talk better," he invited, indicating a side corridor. "Actually, Mr. Miller, I prefer to do business right here in the showroom," declared Sarah, with a look that didn't admit contestation. "After all, this is where the products I'm interested in are." Andrew hesitated for a moment but agreed with a nod. "As you prefer. Which specific model interests you?" Sarah looked around, scanning each displayed vehicle with her eyes. She noticed that Ryan and Pamela were now approaching discreetly, probably trying to overhear the conversation. "I'm interested in 5 units, she responded calmly, observing the surprise on the manager's face. "2 of that premium SUV over there," she pointed to the vehicles she had observed the day before. one of that executive sedan and two of that sports model. The silence that followed was almost palpable. Andrew blinked a few times as if processing the information. "Mrs. Mitchell, you're talking about an investment of approximately $3.5 million, he finally said cautiously. "Perhaps you'd like to discuss financing terms." Mark stepped forward, opening his portfolio. "Financing won't be necessary," he intervened, extending some documents. "The United Producers Cooperative will make the payment in full through immediate bank transfer. Here are the balance verifications and necessary authorizations." The manager examined the documents with growing interest. His professional demeanor couldn't completely hide the astonishment at the numbers he was seeing. "Impressive," he murmured, looking at Sarah again with different eyes. "We'll prepare the contracts immediately. Please follow me to—" "Andrew," interrupted Sarah, subtly raising her voice. "Before we proceed, I'd like to know who will be the salespeople responsible for the transaction. As we know, commissions are important." The manager nodded, looking around. "Brian can take care of you along with Carla." He indicated two salespeople who hadn't participated in the previous day's episode. "Actually," Sarah smiled, and there was something disconcerting about that smile. "I'd like Ryan and Pamela to assist us. After all, we already had an initial contact yesterday." The mention of the names caused the two salespeople to freeze where they stood. Pamela's face visibly paled, while Ryan swallowed hard, adjusting his tie in a nervous gesture. "As you wish," agreed Andrew, gesturing for the two to approach. "Ryan, Pamela, you will personally take care of Mrs. Mitchell." In the 30 minutes that followed, the atmosphere in the dealership transformed completely. The other customers, sensing that something extraordinary was happening, watched discreetly. As documents were signed, technical specifications discussed, and astronomical values mentioned with naturalness, Ryan and Pamela moved like automatons, presenting features of the vehicles that Sarah already knew, answering questions with forced smiles, avoiding eye contact whenever possible. The embarrassment was palpable, amplified by the relentless kindness with which Sarah treated them. "Does this model have four-wheel drive?" she asked Ryan, who was now visibly sweating under his impeccable jacket. "Yes, Mrs. Mitchell. It's ideal for any type of terrain," he replied, swallowing the words about farms or dirt roads he clearly wanted to say. Pamela, for her part, seemed to have aged years in minutes. Her rehearsed smile had transformed into a rigid mask as she explained. "The details of the sound system in one of the vehicles. The acoustics are perfect for classical music appreciators," she commented, avoiding terms like sophisticated people that she certainly would have used the day before. When all the documents were signed and the bank transfer confirmed, Sarah stood up with the same serene dignity as always. The entire showroom seemed to be watching her, including other customers who had realized they were witnessing something out of the ordinary. "Mr. Miller, the vehicles will be picked up tomorrow by our logistics team," she informed, extending her hand for a formal handshake. "It was a pleasure doing business with Elite Motors." "The pleasure was all ours, Mrs. Mitchell," replied Andrew with genuine respect. "I hope this is the beginning of a lasting partnership." Sarah nodded and turned to leave. Before reaching the door, however, she stopped and turned to Ryan and Pamela, who remained paralyzed where they stood. "You were right yesterday," she said in a clear voice without raising her tone. "This place really isn't for just anyone. It's for those who know the value of things and people." With those words, she left accompanied by Mark, leaving behind a deafening silence. In the car, Mark couldn't contain a smile. "That was masterful," he commented, starting the engine. "I've never seen so many people swallowing their words at the same time." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "I didn't do it for revenge, Mark. I did it because some lessons need to be learned. And the cars. Did the cooperative really need all of them? We needed 2, maybe 3. The others will be resold or auctioned at our benefit event next month. Either way, it will be a good investment." What neither of them knew was that Brian, the young salesman, had discreetly recorded the entire scene with his cell phone. Impressed by Sarah's dignity and disgusted by his colleague's behavior the day before, he had decided to document the moment. That same night, without showing faces or mentioning names, he shared the video on his social media. When prejudice comes at a high price, rejected customer returns and buys $3.5 million in cars in cash. The post would go viral faster than anyone could predict. In less than 48 hours, the video shared by Brian reached impressive numbers. 2 million views, chain shares, reports on news portals, and even a brief mention on a national news broadcast. The story of the farmer who got even touched an exposed nerve in American society, where appearances often speak louder than character. Although faces and names had been preserved in the recording, it didn't take long for internet users to identify the dealership. Elite Motors suddenly found itself at the center of a storm of criticism. Its profile on social media was flooded with negative comments, and the hashtag "Earned Respect Can't Be Bought" became a national trending topic. Sarah learned of what happened while returning to Hastings. Tommy, who was driving, showed her the notification on his cell phone. "Mrs. Mitchell, you've become a celebrity." She took the device and watched the video with an indecipherable expression. Brian had been careful, but anyone present at the dealership that day would recognize the situation. "This isn't what I wanted, Tommy," she commented, returning the cell phone. "The lesson was for them, not for the world. But the world needs these lessons too, don't you think?" Sarah looked out the window, observing the prairie landscape she loved so much. Perhaps Tommy was right. At Elite Motors, the atmosphere was funereal. Andrew Miller called an emergency meeting with all employees. His grave expression made it clear that the matter was serious. "What happened here in the last few days is unacceptable," he began, particularly facing Ryan and Pamela. "Our policy has always been absolute respect for all customers, regardless of their appearance or origin." Ryan tried to defend himself. "Mr. Miller, we were just trying to maintain the store's standard. That lady didn't seem... "What, Ryan?" interrupted Andrew coldly. "Rich enough? Sophisticated enough? The lady you dismissed is Sarah Mitchell, president of the United Producers Cooperative, one of the largest agricultural organizations in the Midwest. She manages assets that would take you 3 lifetimes to accumulate." The silence in the room was absolute. Pamela kept her eyes fixed on the floor while Ryan visibly paled. "More important than that," continued Andrew, "she is a human being who deserved respect, regardless of her bank account. This incident has tarnished our reputation in a way that will take time to recover." He looked around at the tense faces of the employees. "Ryan and Pamela, you are dismissed from the company, effective immediately. Brian," he turned to the young salesman, who swallowed hard, "we know it was you who recorded the video." Brian stood up, ready to hand in his badge. "I understand, sir. I'll gather my things." "Not so fast," Andrew raised his hand. "Although I don't approve of the method, I recognize your integrity in exposing an unacceptable situation. You remain on the team, but are warned about using images of the dealership without authorization." The repercussions didn't stop there. The next morning, Sarah received a flood of interview requests. Newspapers, magazines, television programs, digital influencers all wanted to hear her version of the story. She refused them all with the same gentleness. "I have no interest in extending this situation," she explained to Rachel, who managed her schedule. "It was an unpleasant episode that ended with a necessary lesson, nothing more." "But Mrs. Mitchell, this could bring visibility to the cooperative," argued Rachel. "We could use this wave to promote our values." "Our values promote themselves through our work, not through passing controversies," she replied, with the practical wisdom that characterized her. "Now let's focus on what matters. The harvest is coming." Among the many messages she received, one caught her attention: an email from David Anderson, CEO of Rural Tech, a startup that developed technological solutions for agribusiness. He requested a meeting to discuss a possible partnership. Normally, Sarah would delegate this type of initial contact to her innovation team. But something in the message, perhaps the sincerity of the tone or the originality of the proposal, made her accept personally. 3 days later, David arrived at the cooperative's headquarters in Hastings. He was a young man, no more than 35, with the typical enthusiasm of entrepreneurs and the objectivity of someone who knew the field. "Mrs. Mitchell, it's an honor to meet you," he greeted, while accompanying Sarah on a tour of the property. "Our initial interest was purely commercial, I confess, but after that video—" "That video doesn't define me, Mr. Anderson," she gently interrupted. "It's just a moment in a life dedicated to building bridges, not walls." David nodded, impressed with the response. "That's exactly why we're here. Rural Tech is developing a direct commerce platform between rural producers and the premium market. We eliminate intermediaries, value the origin of products, and mainly connect worlds that normally don't meet." As they walked among soybean plantations, David explained the concept: an application where agricultural cooperatives could not only sell their products, but also acquire goods and services directly from premium suppliers, without the filter of prejudices or the invisible barriers of elitism. American agribusiness moves billions, but there's still this cultural disconnect between the producer and the urban luxury market, he continued. "We want to change that, and we'd like you to be our advisor and the face of the platform." Sarah stopped, observing the horizon where her plantations extended as far as the eye could see. "Why me? There are better-known names, more mediagenic faces." "Because you don't need to pretend to be something you're not," replied David with sincerity. "Your authenticity is exactly what we want to convey." The proposal was tempting, not for the financial aspect, but for the possibility of transforming that unpleasant episode into something constructive. After a few meetings with her team and lawyers, Sarah accepted the invitation, with one condition. "I don't want to be presented as the farmer who got even, but as an agribusiness entrepreneur who believes in the integration between different sectors of the economy." 6 months later, the Premium Earth platform was officially launched at an event in Chicago. It brought together the best in agribusiness and the national luxury market, creating an ecosystem where value wasn't in appearance, but in quality and authenticity. The success was immediate. Agricultural cooperatives gained direct access to previously intimidating markets, while luxury companies discovered a segment of clients with high purchasing power who simply didn't fit the usual stereotype. In an exclusive interview for Forbes magazine, David Anderson stated, "What began with a viral video has transformed into a cultural transformation movement. We're breaking paradigms about who can or cannot participate in the premium market." Sarah, sitting on her porch in Hastings, smiled as she read the report. The magazine had chosen a photo of her in the field, wearing her usual clothes, simple and functional, with the title, "The Silent Revolution of American Agriculture." "What did you think of the article, Mom?" asked Jessica, her daughter who had recently returned from Europe, where she had studied agricultural administration. "I think they finally understood the point," she replied, serving coffee for her daughter. "It wasn't about cars or money. It was about respect and recognition." Jessica observed her mother with admiration. Since childhood, she had witnessed her struggle to transform that small property into an empire, always keeping her feet on the ground and her values intact. "And what about those salespeople? I heard they were fired." Sarah made a gesture with her hand as if shooing away a fly. "I don't hold grudges. They probably learned something from all this. Life is generous in giving us lessons when we need them." In fact, she knew exactly what had happened to Ryan and Pamela. A few months after the incident, she had received an email from Ryan, a long and sincere message apologizing for his behavior and explaining how that episode had provoked a deep reflection on his values and attitudes. "I lost my job, but gained a perspective that no salary could buy," he had written. He told how he had returned to his hometown in rural Kentucky, where he now worked in the small family business. "Here, people are valued for who they are, not what they appear to be." Sarah had replied with a simple message, "Welcome to the real world. It's much richer and more diverse than that showroom." As for Brian, the young salesman who had recorded the video, his career took an unexpected turn. After a year at Elite Motors, he was invited by David to join the Premium Earth team, where he became responsible for relationships with luxury vehicle dealerships. The irony didn't go unnoticed. Elite Motors itself, after a complete restructuring led by Andrew Miller, became a partner of the platform, offering special conditions for rural producers. The experience had been painful, but transformative. On a particularly pleasant afternoon, Sarah received an unexpected visit. Andrew Miller had traveled to Hastings specifically to get to know her better and strengthen the partnership between the dealership and the cooperative. "You transformed a moment of crisis into an opportunity for all of us," he commented as they walked around the property. "That's rare these days," Sarah smiled, watching the sun beginning to set on the prairie horizon. "You know, Mr. Miller, my father used to say that on the farm, we learn two fundamental things: patience and resilience. The seed needs the right time to germinate, and the weather doesn't always cooperate. But if you know the land and respect its cycles, the harvest always comes." "A beautiful philosophy," replied Andrew, genuinely impressed. "It's not philosophy, it's experience," she gently corrected. "It's what happens when you stop looking only at the surface and begin to value the roots." As they returned to the main house, one of the farm employees passed by them driving one of the luxury SUVs acquired on that memorable day at Elite Motors. The vehicle, now with the cooperative's logo, was used to transport important visitors and for Sarah's own business. "Trips, and I see. The cars are being put to good use," observed Andrew. "Tools are made to work, not to impress," she replied with simplicity. "Just like people." That night, after Andrew's departure, Sarah sat again on her porch. The stars shone intensely in the Midwest sky, without the competition of urban lights. It was the same sky that her father observed decades ago when he dreamed of a better future for the family. In a way, that episode at the dealership had closed a circle. The country girl, daughter of small farmers, no longer needed to prove her worth to anyone. Her legacy was firmly planted, not only in the fields that stretched before her, but also in the new business culture she had helped to sow. On the farm, we learn that those who look too much at appearances stumble on reality, she murmured to herself, repeating the words her father used to say so often. "I just went there to harvest what was already mine by right." And so, between the earth and the sky of America's heartland, Sarah Mitchell continued her journey, proving that true luxury lies in authenticity, and that appearances, like seasons, pass, but character, like deep roots, remains. Dear listeners, we hope that Sarah's journey has touched your hearts and awakened reflections. To continue exploring stories that reveal the true soul of America, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating narratives about extraordinary people in unexpected situations. Find this playlist by clicking on the link to the left. If this story about respect, dignity, and the silent strength of those who know their own worth touched you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Every day we bring unique stories that celebrate the diversity and richness of the American people. And you, have you ever lived or witnessed a situation where you were judged by appearances? Tell us in the comments. Your experiences enrich our community and help us choose the next topics. Thank you for sharing this moment with us, and until the next story.